You know why it sucks to be heterosexual, to put it in easy language, in a homophobic culture? Because you can't prove it.
Do you want to know what it is?
Let me start off with the number one rule if you ever find yourself engaging with these people. And that number one rule is to never expect honesty from them. You do, you expect honesty from them, and that will be the biggest mistake you ever made while you're engaging with them. Whether you're engaging with them in a live discussion, commenting back and forth on a comment board or chat room, and even if you're engaging by just listening to them, always know that what they are and what they're about is diametrically opposed to the truth, diametrically opposed to the facts, and diametrically opposed to reality itself. Let me give you an example. And this is the very beginning of the video.
Heterophobia, not a thing, a fabrication of victimhood created by homophobes who have never experienced discrimination against them in their lives. Heterophobia is not a thing. Here and today we are looking into heterophobia and cisphobia and memes around these things that do not exist in the same way that homophobia and transphobia and biphobia exist. They're not comparable because LGBT plus people actually face discrimination, and there are laws against elements of LGBT plus people's lives specifically because they're LGBT plus that are not faced by cisgender heterosexual people.
He started offline because what is phobia has absolutely nothing to do with the law or being discriminated against. The definition of phobia is the irrational fear or irrational aversion to something. You're scared for no good reason, or you don't like it for no good reason. Irrational fear or aversion. Arachnophobia, the fear of spiders. Can we say that there's no such thing because spiders haven't been discriminated against and had laws made against them? No. And when somebody calls you homophobic or transphobic for no good reason, tell them that there's nothing irrational about your position. But what he did is called a comparative suffering fallacy. And fallacies are used to deceive people or to just outright lie. A comparative suffering fallacy is where you dismiss something by comparing it to something else. You complaining about being hungry because you haven't eaten all day? Shut up. Shut up, because there are other people in other countries that haven't eaten in 4 days. So be quiet, you're not hungry. That's what you heard that dude do.
Here and today we are looking into heterophobia and cisphobia and memes around these things that do not exist in the same way that homophobia and transphobia and biphobia exist.
Again, rule number one, always expect deception when you're engaging with them. And the title of that video clip that I just played is Say No to Heterophobia. No meaning heterophobia doesn't exist. Which leads me into the other reason I played that clip. Always expect them to deceive you. And the other reason is how they have zero regard for other people's everything. How he dismissed what other people could be going through by saying it doesn't exist. It's standard protocol for them. And that means all things, you and me. To them, they are the only thing that matters. Let me show you.
So here's some definitions. This is what Audre Lorde has to say about heterosexism. This is her definition for heterosexism. A belief in the inherent superiority of one form of loving over all others and thereby the right to dominance. That's one definition of heterosexism. Another is a system of attitudes, bias, and discrimination in favor of dichotomous same-sex, opposite sex, sorry, woo, we know where I'm at. Oops. In favor of dichotomous opposite sex, sexuality and relationships. Heterosexism, heteronormativity. Just to break it down a little bit more. Heterosexism, the big idea here is the assumption that everyone is heterosexual. So that's the way that we've built our systems, assuming that everybody's heterosexual, right? It's a form of oppression that targets LGBTQ people, and it confers rights and privileges to heterosexual people that are denied to LGBTQ people. So homophobia, then, is a direct result of heterosexism. It's the product. And when we have systems and laws and policies in place that are heterosexist, it gives permission for people to enact that at the individual level, right?
Or in other words, if you that's listening are heterosexual, you are the problem. And you are responsible for creating all of the world's problems, according to them. And according to them, homophobia is real, but heterophobia is a myth. You saw the lady there who goes around the country demonizing heterosexuality because, like I said earlier, they are diametrically opposed to all things that we know as reality. And she's not the only one. There are tons of them who make these appearances where they preach their demonology.
Well, let's get started. It's kind of a strange topic, isn't it? The problem with heterosexuality in a homophobic culture?
He's saying that heterosexuality is the cause of homophobia. You and me are the problem, he's saying. And somewhere in that lecture, in his sermon, he says, now, I'm not trying to demonize heterosexuality. He's lying. That's exactly what he's doing. But notice the deception, how he speeds this thing in there. He just speeds it right in there. And he does this throughout his sermon because it's a religion. But listen close.
Isn't it? The problem with heterosexuality in a homophobic culture? It's not something we think about. We think about, well, in a homophobic culture, we should be looking at the problems with being gay or lesbian or some other form of sexual minority in a homophobic culture.
In a homophobic culture? See how fast he says that? Like the speed of light. And he does that over and over throughout that sermon. He has an issue with heterosexuality in a homophobic culture. He only speeds the homophobic culture thing straight past the listener so that you lose track of him saying that heterosexuality is a problem. And I'll have his sermon in the description box so you can go hear him describe heterosexuality as the evil upon the face of the earth.
Or some other form of sexual minority in a homophobic culture. Not, what's the problem with being straight in a homophobic culture? So that's the question we're going to ask today. And my primary objective is to get you to think about this critically. At the end of the day, I don't care whether you agree with me or disagree with me. I care that you think intellectually and that you critically analyze the thoughts that you have, the beliefs that you maintain on a subject. That's what I'm concerned about. But before I get into this, like, what is the problem with heterosexuality? And there's a lot of problems with heterosexuality in a homophobic culture. It's a whole bunch. At the end of the day, I'm going to...
But right there is where he started to go in on heterosexuality. Go hear it. And by the way, that sermon is from 13 years ago. So they've been at this for a very long time. And it's not just people on the internet making videos or faceless people posting comments. This demonology is taught on the academic level too. In a homophobic culture, the clips I played is only the first 55 seconds of the sermon, and he's already said in a homophobic culture like 5 times in the first few seconds.
So, you know what the problem with heterosexuality is? It's not that there's anything innately wrong with heterosexuality, or that heterosexuality is a disease, or heterosexuality is problematic, or whatnot. I don't think people are heterosexual because of something's gone wrong in their upbringing, or that there's some genetic mutation that's made people heterosexual. That's not what I'm talking about. You know why it sucks to be heterosexual, to put it in easy language, in a homophobic culture?
Another thing to remember before I get out of here, and this is my fault too. Don't get trapped in me saying,
We gonna keep saying trans.
Don't let me mesmerize you with that, because the movement we've been seeing really take off since the George Floyd murder in 2020 is not only the LGBTQIA, because this demon has many legs to it. Like the guy giving the sermon about the homophobic culture. I don't know him, but I don't think he's gay. Nothing about him says gay to me. You have different kinds of people that's involved in this demon. Right? So that's all this commentary was about. Just another heads up.
Welcome to the desert of the real.